Pete Waterman's Director of FedRAMP at GSA, and Ryan Hoesing is Chief of Staff for FedRAMP. Gentlemen, welcome. Thanks for joining me today. Ryan, you were on stage earlier. Pete, you just came off stage. What was the message you wanted to convey to people when you were up there?
I mean, right now it's all about just making sure that companies are ready to rethink the way that they're going about security. Like compliance has historically been a big focus on slow moving engines where compliance is separate from the security, the engineering, the product aspect of an organization. And we just saw an AI system hack its way out of its sandbox and attack someone else. And if like we don't have time anymore to like have an organization on the side. We need compliance built in with engineering, and we need everyone moving fast together.
The pace at which all of these things are progressing means what for both the vendors who want to sell to the agencies and the agencies who need to protect themselves?
Yeah, I mean, it's not even just at this point, like it's not about the agencies or anything. It's just about tech in general. Like, where are you at? You cannot coast on an old model. You cannot like try to build products that are going to be secure and take your customers' information while also not being prepared to respond at the speed of autonomous systems. And that is a rethink. And the reality is that on the government side, our process has historically incentivized a slower, kind of like more checkbox based approach where it's just like, are you doing enough? Yes or no, but it doesn't actually look at how fast you're responding. And that's one of the big things that we're looking to change in FedRAMP is to have these companies start sharing the metrics on how fast they're actually responding. And instead of you telling me, this is my plan to respond, we get to look at, here's the last 6 months of your response. I like you. You tend to respond within hours. This other company, they take 3 days. I don't want my information out on the internet for 3 days.
You said a couple of things there I want to come back to. Ryan, welcome. It's good to have you on too. You spoke earlier this morning. What do you want to tell folks from the stage today?
I'm going to echo what Pete said about timing. I've been around with the program for some time, and it is a checkbox approach. It's, do you have these 400 security controls in place? Yes or no? And from a CSP perspective, a cloud service provider, they're looking at that maybe annually, maybe once every 3 years. It's supposed to be a living document. Right now, that document stands in an Excel format. So moving to some machine-readable formats that can be ingested into GRC, governance, risk, and compliance tools is going to really push forward agencies in terms of adoption and speed, but also it's going to help with security along the way.
Oh, go ahead.
One of the things I saw when I first started in this game a long time ago, in 2019, was like multi-factor authentication. There was a test that was, do you have this setting enabled? Yes or no? Yes. Screenshot it. So one time at this one moment in this audit, in this dark room with literally no windows, that was deemed sufficient. Now we're moving towards a world where it's like, show me what percentage of logins on every day, what percentage follow multi-factor authentication route. Like that is the difference between a checklist that we're talking about, a point in time, versus actually having a real-time intelligence about your security posture.
How do you determine, not you personally, how does one determine, Ryan, the balance between once a year, obviously doesn't do the job anymore, and I mean, every day, every hour? It can't be that either. So it strikes me there's maybe a slider in there in between where you have to kind of hit the sweet spot.
Yeah, absolutely. And FedRAMP 20X is the new authorization, I should say certification. I apologize for that Freudian slip, but we are now calling FedRAMP authorizations FedRAMP certifications to distinguish between agency authorizations to operate and FedRAMP certifications. So the 20X process really leaves that up to the cloud service offering, but it uses language like persistently. We're going to persistently validate. And so it's up to the cloud service provider based on what level their system is. We have low, moderate, and high, now class B, C, and D. And they're going to look at their system and they're going to say, hey, we're going to do this every 4 hours. We're going to do this every 12 hours. So it's really up to the cloud service provider to determine that. Then agencies consume that, and based on the data they're going to put in the system, they make a determination, well, 4 hours is too slow for us, or 4 hours is just right. And so it's really up to the agencies to take this data and consume it when they're using these systems.
And I love that you use persistently, because like this is an example of something we have defined, and it's different than we've approached things before. It is basically, there is a cycle that happens, that cycle is defined, and that cycle is triggered by something, and that is documented. And so frequently we talk about time. Time isn't important. Time doesn't necessarily matter. If nothing changes, why do I need to check things every day? So you can have a persistent trigger that might be anytime something is deployed, anytime some telemetry fires off that says there's something suspicious. It doesn't just have to be time. And the way that you get to efficiency at scale with machine automation and capabilities is that you do that based on the changes and the things that are moving in the environment. And somebody opens a door, you say, okay, let's check and make sure that was the right person. But if the door isn't open, you don't have to worry about who's there.
I want to go back to something that Ryan said. Either one of you can answer this. Is there a risk that giving the agencies too many choices, as you just described, impacts the replicability that is valuable and helpful to the vendors to be able to provide the services?
No, I disagree. I don't think that's the case. And I think that the problem is that an agency deserves to be able to use things that are cheaper, that are more available for cases that provide less protection or where less protection is needed. This idea that in order for me to give my people at an agency access to a capability, it has to be something that I'm going to deploy across my entire agency. I'm going to treat it like, this is super secret national security stuff. Like the vast majority of the work that we do on a day-to-day basis is actually subject to FOIA. It can be public at any time. It's not really sensitive. It's not a big deal. And like that stuff should be cheap. And so the advantage there, it's not that it makes it harder for agencies because they're not sure, they have to compare things, but it allows agencies to actually follow the risk management framework and decide, this use case, I would like something that isn't very secure and that is super cheap because I don't care about the data. We're going to be interacting with the public. It doesn't matter if it's exposed. And they should have a very different approach for like veterans healthcare. If you got veteran health data, that's very different from the same thing that Veterans Affairs might use to interact with people about events at hospitals.
And I kind of want to flip the script on your question a little bit, because I think there's risk now in the sense that CSPs are providing packages that agencies aren't looking at because they are saying it's FedRAMP authorized. I don't have to look at that package. Well, we want the agencies to be looking at these packages. We want them to know and work with the cloud service provider to understand what the risks are. I can tell you in my experience with FedRAMP, if you go in and look at the repository, there are agencies that have issued ATOs that don't even have access to certain cloud security packages.
I mean,
So that is a risk. That is a huge risk. And I think a lot of that comes from misconception of what reciprocity is. A couple of speakers today talked about reciprocity, and reciprocity means you have a security package that can be used by an agency to make a risk determination. For many years in this game, I've heard it's FedRAMP, you can just use it. That has never been the case.
There was a situation a few years back where an agency deployed some cloud software that was FedRAMP certified. That got compromised, and it turned out they weren't even using the FedRAMP certified version. They had never looked at it. They didn't know. They were just using the wrong capability. Like that's a mistake that we can't have. We need agencies to be investing resources and time into making these risk decisions.
What do you think would drive better, I can't think of a better word besides compliance, with the agencies to not make that mistake again, Pete? Because if they're still making it, they're still making it.
Yeah, I mean, that is a really complicated question because there's so much that goes into it. And like really it's all about enablement. It's about how do we get in a situation where people aren't making decisions based out of fear of doing something other than the current process. So it's about the current moment that we're in right now is pretty much, if we can't break out of that now, we're never going to break out of it. And we're seeing that. We're seeing that from National Cyber Director, from CISA. Everything needs to change. The recent Binding Operational Directive 2604 from CISA entirely changed the game on vulnerability management. Before, it had been do a scan once a month, find a thing, fix it sometime, send us some data. Now it's invest resources, effort, technical ability into analyzing your stuff. The things that are not likely to be exploited, don't worry about it. Focus on the things that are bad. And we saw something really interesting there was a SOC call where someone actually asked at an agency, well, if I have to fix this in 3 days, what happens if we detect it on Friday? Do I have to work over the weekend? And like, just think about that environment where a security program at an agency, a leader in that program is genuinely asking if it's okay to leave a like known exploited vulnerability on the internet over the weekend. And so we need to see that behavior change. And the way that we do that is by a combination of finding operational directives, regulations, but also empowering, hiring, and incentivizing people to do that.
All right, we have just about a minute left. I want to come back to a term that you used earlier that I think is really interesting. You talked about working at the speed of autonomous systems. You said out loud what people have been saying quietly for a number of years. There are a number of autonomous systems in the government, and there have to be, and I think everybody knows it, but not really anybody's talking about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's always there's always been autonomous systems out here on the internet, especially related to security. One of the big shifts in the security landscape in the 2000s was a system called Shodan, which became kind of the first system that would globally scan the entire internet repeatedly. So instead of you having to say, I'm going to find all of these cameras, in hotels and tap into them, you could just go there and search and get a list. Here's all the open cameras on the internet, and you can go like do that stuff. We've been at that stage, so we've had to defend against that. But now you have directed attack that is going to be very easy. We have open weight models that can be run on very lightweight systems. And the reality is that you can go at scale of internet. So if you think about what the internet looks like when every single system that is exposed to the internet with a vulnerability can get compromised for something to happen, it's going to be bad. It's going to be like it was in the early 2000s when we didn't have firewalls. And every week you'd read about some like municipal web page that got owned and somebody wrote something silly. And we talked about script kiddies going out and hacking that. But now it doesn't have to be script kiddies. It could be advanced persistent threats.
We have about 30 seconds left, Ryan. You've spoken on a number of occasions about trying to transform FedRAMP into a trust platform versus what it's been in the past and the compliance exercises that a lot of people complain about. What will drive that, and how will you judge that to be successful?
Yeah, it's going to be driven by all of our stakeholders. Starts, of course, with FedRAMP, with creating the framework for cloud service providers to use. But then it also is important for cloud service providers to engage with agencies. It's important for FedRAMP to engage with agencies. It's important for agencies to engage with agencies. I think when we'll really see this take off is when you have one or two agencies adopt a 20x system and they can start talking with other agencies, because looking back at historic Rev 5 authorizations, that's how that whole agency pipeline kicked off. It was a couple agencies were comfortable with the process, they start talking, and it goes off from there.
I mean, FedRAMP provides the framework, but it's always going to be on the cloud service provider to provide the assurance.